Hello, everyone. Hi. I hope you can all hear me okay. Welcome to Touch Tank Tuesday. Today, I'm excited to talk to you about another special critter from our Touch Tanks. Welcome to Touch Tank Tuesday. My name is Olivia, and I am the educator here at the Deep Bay Marine Field Station. The Deep Bay Marine Field Station is an education and research facility that is part of Vancouver Island University, and we're located right here on Vancouver Island. If you haven't been here before, we have a huge education facility. Oh, hi, James. We have a huge education facility and research facility. Most of our education and research focuses on our local marine environment, and it also focuses on shellfish and shellfish aquaculture. Oh, hello, Ottawa group. Hi, Barb. Wow. So we have lots of people here today. This session today is our first session where we are streaming across platforms. So we are live right now on Facebook, we're live on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Hopefully all of those are working, and I should be able to see all your comments. Looks like it's working on Facebook at least. Today's session will be on the graceful crab. As you might have seen at the beginning here, I will pop, oh, that's not Olivia. I'll pop the graceful crab up onto the screen right now so you can see it. So if you remember from one of our previous sessions, I really tried to get the graceful crab when we talked about crabs, but she had hidden. So on the morning of when I went to show you her, she must have been buried into the sand. But today I was able to find her. She was running around all of our tanks, which is really great, while the one tank she's in. And so I was able to catch her to bring her for you today. And so if any of you are looking to see some of those previous sessions, so that session that I talked about the different crab, we had a last minute switch last time. You can check out our Facebook page just at VIU Deep Bay. Or you can go on the Vancouver Island University's community classroom. And this community classroom is a really neat way to get the community involved with VIU's education and outreach programs. So you can go onto that website. There are a couple of our past sessions, but there's also some of the other activities that are happening at Vancouver Island University. So you can definitely check that out. Oh, hi, Steve. Okay, so let's begin. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to put them into the comment section, and I should be able to answer them. If I don't see them, maybe from technical issues or I get distracted, or if I can't answer your question, you will get an answer afterwards. I will come back on all of our channels to make sure that I can answer those questions for you. But for now, it looks like Facebook is working. Okay, so I will pretty much have the graceful crab up for most of our session here. You can see our graceful crab. But first, I will talk, like usual, about crabs in general, and then we'll talk about our specific species, the graceful crab, who is now quieted down. She was running circles around the big tub I put her in. She is pretty big, so we'll see how this turns out. So first of all, crabs are in this big group, so that phylum Arthropoda. And so they're arthropods. Really, crustaceans are, crabs are crustacean arthropods. So you have that big phylum. Remember the big group when we talked about another big group like Echinodermata, that big phylum, that one has sea urchins, sea stars, sea cucumbers all in there. Well, this is a different group, Arthropoda. And inside that group, there's a little bit of a smaller group. It's called a subphylum, and that is Crustacea. So these are crustaceans, and crustaceans can include shrimp. You probably know shrimp, lobsters, crabs, hermit crabs. There's so many different species that are involved in that big group, and basically all of them have exoskeletons. So that's that hard skin on the outsides of their bodies. And they have a segmented body. So that means that their body is in different parts. And we'll talk a bit about that later when we talk about this graceful crab. And so that's the big phylum, the subphylum. And then we look at the order. The order is Decapoda or Decapoda. And so they're decapods. That's what we call them. And what that means, deca, 10, pods, legs, so 10 legs. And as you can see just on this graceful crab here, that you could count, there are 5 pairs of legs. So, and these are walking legs. So you can see from the back, in fact, I can point to it over here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And the 5th one is walking, but it also has those big claws on it. This is a fairly large crab from our touch tanks. And actually, our graceful crab will likely, once we're open to the public again, move to our aquariums because it's a little bit too big for tiny fingers to go into the touch tanks. So she will move up into our aquarium, or we might decide to put her out into the environment, whichever one we think will give her the best survival. Hi, Lisa, welcome. Okay, so that's the order, Decapoda. And now this is kind of where crabs start to diverge. So they go into 2 different groups. So we have true crabs, which will be in the smaller group, Brachyura. And then we have hermit crabs. And so hermit crabs are not true crabs. If you look at them, you know that they can walk forward. They don't have, they use a shell from a snail. Remember, we've talked about this before about hermit crabs. So that's kind of where they go into 2 different groups. And so today we're just going to talk about true crabs. And we're just going to talk about those true crabs that are kind of local here to the Pacific Northwest. Crabs can live on land, they can live in water, they can be in marine environments, they can be in freshwater environments. So they really are quite diverse in where they live. Here at Deep Bay, we have lots of crabs in the intertidal zone. So remember, that's that area that is covered and then uncovered by the tide throughout the day. So that's the intertidal zone. So we have lots of shore crabs that live there. And then we also have them in the subtidal zone. And so that means just in deeper waters. And crabs can live in very deep waters. It just depends on which species it is. And so with these different places, they can be different species. And this crab here, the graceful crab, is more in the subtidal area, so it does not come up out of the water. So it lives a little bit deeper. And the very popular crab that is actually very popular here in BC, and it's part of the seafood industry, is the Dungeness crab. And so that's a really valuable crab, and it gets quite big, so people can eat it, and you might have eaten one before. Generally, crabs are scavengers, so they'll crawl along the seafloor, finding whatever food they want to eat. And usually that's algae, and they can get that in the water. It can also be scallops. So in our touch tanks, after this, maybe on our social media channels, I will post a video of this graceful crab eating a scallop in our touch tanks, which was quite amazing to watch. So they can eat different types of shellfish. It's pretty much anything that they find along the seafloor, but usually they prefer algae. And so let's talk. I will make this crab bigger, and we will talk about the body parts of a crab. And ooh, right there. Okay, you can see me quite tiny in the corner, but now you can see the crab. And so what I'll actually do, I will disappear a little bit from this video so that I can show you a little bit closer. So again, we have these 10 legs. So you can see my fingers here. We have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So 10 walking legs. And the outside, so right here, you might see her jump. So this is the carapace. The carapace is this very thick shell. And so if you think turtles have a carapace, that's their shell. But for crabs, it's made out of chitin. And chitin, spelled C-H-I-T-I-N, it looks like it should be pronounced kitten, but chitin is a very strong material, and that helps to protect the crab from predators and the environment. Maybe it lives in a very harsh environment and maybe rocks will come onto it, so it helps to protect it. So it's evolved this carapace or shell. And they also have a thick exoskeleton. So that thick exoskeleton basically covers their entire body. So here are its legs. And as you can see, the top here, it has these teeth, so these little spikes along its carapace. Hopefully you can see these. So there are these spikes that go all the way along to its front area. And then it has these two eye stalks. You can see its two eyes are kind of a little bit apart there. And then it has its mouth, and that's where it eats and also filters algae. So it does, you can see them kind of moving a little bit, but that's where its eyes are. And so for the exoskeleton, it's really cool because as a crab starts to grow, it actually sheds its entire skin all the way around its body. So the way it does that is it kind of takes in water. So it takes water in under its skin and expands and breaks this shell or exoskeleton around it. And the reason it does that is because it needs to grow bigger and its skin just doesn't fit. So it molts that, and that can happen yearly. It really depends on the species. And there is something called sexual dimorphism. What that means is that males and females look a little bit different. So you might have heard me calling this crab a she, and that's because you can tell that she is a girl because of the way her abdomen is shaped. So I will flip her over in a minute when we're talking a little bit more about that, and you will see her tail. So something about the name, in that order, Brachyura, that means brachia is short, ura is tail, so short tail. Crabs have tails, which is very cool. So these crabs have tails, but they're tucked right under their abdomen. So crabs do have tails, you just can't really see them. And so with sexual dimorphism, the abdomen is wider for females and then longer for males. And also females tend to be a little bit smaller and they tend to have smaller claws. So if you had the two beside each other, you could compare them. But the easiest way to tell is with underneath looking at the tail. And let's talk about the life cycle. So they spend their adult life sort of crawling sideways along the sea floor. And at some point, the females will produce eggs, and those eggs will sit under her abdomen, and she'll actually hold on to them for a fairly long time. And once they're ready, she will disperse them into the water column, and they go through some physical changes through their life cycle until they settle. So they'll end up settling and then creating that exoskeleton on them. So they'll form the exoskeleton and then molt and grow and molt and grow until they're quite big. So let me show you now. I will show you the tail of this crab. So I'll disappear for a moment. And you might see her jump. She is not super happy when I touch her, but you can see underneath here. So my hand is actually on the tail. And this is actually something I could show you here. So I'll make myself bigger. Yeah, so here she is. So this is her tail, this dark color here. And you see, we can see her claws and we can see these walking legs all the way around. And I might be able to even get you a little bit closer to her mouth here. So you can see her mouth. It's really quite cool. She is amazing. And so that is what she looks like underneath. And so this is quite wide, whereas the males would be very thin, that plate, that tail plate. You can kind of see it on the side here. So anyone, let me know if you have questions at all. I don't see any yet. Does she hold the eggs after they are fertilized? That's a really great question. Yes, I think that she does. I will double check that, but I do think that she keeps them. And actually what I'll do here is, so everyone, you can see the question here. So does she hold the eggs after they're fertilized? I think that she does. And she holds on to them for a little bit of time before releasing them when they're ready. But the males will broadcast, so they will fertilize just out into the water column as well. I think that they have a higher chance of being fertilized if they are released and out in the water column. So that's a really good question. I will double check, but I think that they'll hold on to them and they might get fertilized, but that she might send them out into the current and then they'd be fertilized there. So I think it kind of depends on where the males are at that time. Really great question. Okay, so now that I have her flipped under, oh, why do they have tails? That's a good question. I actually don't know why they've evolved these tails. I will look into it if you can think of a reason. So why would they evolve tails? It could be oh yeah, I'll tell you in a minute, James. So why do they evolve tails? So I'm not sure why they have tails, but it is kind of interesting that they have them since they don't particularly use them. And I think that they might use them during mating. I will check on that and let you know afterwards. Really great question. Okay, James. So females are a little bit smaller than males. Then males have bigger claws, but your big indicator is just under her stomach here where my thumb is. And I will make that a little bit bigger for you. So just where my thumb is, you see this? It sort of has a egg shape to it, her tail, but males will have a thinner, longer tail. And I don't want to stress her out too much, so I am going to set her down there so she'll run away. But really great question. Okay. So now she's run away, but I will refocus the camera on her. So let's talk a little bit about the graceful crab. The graceful crab is really interesting because it is so hard to decide whether it's a graceful crab or a young Dungeness crab because they look so similar. But the thing is that Dungeness crabs are very economically important. So they you can make a lot of money by harvesting them. So it's really good to be able to tell which crab this is. So this looks like a young Dungeness, but the reason we know it's not a young Dungeness is because of a couple different characteristics. So a Dungeness crab and a graceful crab will both, I'll just focus in here on her, will both have this sort of purple look to her. I'll turn the light on so you can see. So she is purple. So she has this purpley brown look. And so Dungeness, when they're younger, they also look that way. But Dungeness crabs have a bunch of hairs on their claws. And if we count the teeth that go around the graceful crab, so if you count those teeth, the widest part of a graceful crab is the second last tooth as you go around, but the widest part of the Dungeness crab is the last tooth as you go around the carapace. So it's these tiny little differences. And now this is a full-grown graceful crab. So she won't get any bigger. So graceful crab females get to be about 8-9 centimeters across. The males end up being up to 11 or 12 centimeters across. Again, there's that sexual dimorphism. So it's really quite interesting how different they can be. Another thing is the teeth. So those spikes that go around the carapace, you can see them going around here. They have little white tips on them. So in the graceful crab, they have these white tips, but the Dungeness does not have these white tips. So we had a really hard time trying to decide which crab this was. Oh, and Lisa asks, is the tail attached flat to its body, or can they loosen it when needed? So I do think that it does loosen, and I think it has to do with their mating, but I'm not entirely sure. So I will come back and reply to you with the definite answer, but that's a really great question. Okay, really good. So yeah, that's about it for our graceful crab. Our graceful crab, I don't know how she came in. She must have come in as a larva when bringing in other critters. Right now we have a huge boom in the number of critters that are in our touch tanks that we didn't put in there. So when I did go a couple weeks ago to collect some specific species, so like those pink-tipped anemones from last week or the week before, when I did go to get those, maybe there was larvae of some kind on there because we have so many different types of invertebrates in our touch tanks now. We suddenly have this huge boom in burrowing cucumbers. So I will post a video as well on our Facebook. There is one on our Instagram with a burrowing cucumber, which looks so cool because they send their tentacles out into the water, but you can't see them because they're under the sand. So we have so many different critters. So great question. Lisa asks, are they common in Deep Bay? So I think they are pretty common. You won't really find them in the intertidal zone. You might find them very low in the intertidal zone. So you might see them when the tide is down, even if it's a negative tide or if it's 1 meter tide, you might be able to see them, but they are really hard to find because they're under rocks, they're in the sand. So they're really hard to find, especially because of their color. As I said, when I was trying to find them for our touch tank last time, she was so difficult to find because if she's burrowed in, you can only see that sort of brown top on her. So she's really hard to find, but they are found here in Deep Bay. Yeah, great question. Okay, any more questions? I hope I've been able to see some of your questions. Oh, another one from James. I'm not sure. I haven't seen any questions from any of our other platforms other than Facebook. So I will check on your questions afterwards if you are one of those other platforms. James asked, what types of crabs do you find in Deep Bay? So in Deep Bay, there are a bunch of different types of crabs. I don't know how many are specifically in the Pacific Northwest. That's something I can look up. But for the ones that we've found, we've seen some green shore crabs. We've seen, not to be mixed up with the European shore crab, but just green regular shore crabs, purple shore crabs. We have the Dungeness crabs, but those are a little bit deeper. They end up being deeper, so they wouldn't be in the intertidal zone. We have the graceful crab. In our touch tanks, we have some rock crabs. The crab from last time, and I know, kelp crabs, which are kind of cool. They have their claws kind of forward, so we have kelp crabs. So there's so many different types of crabs that are here. I don't think I've even seen all of them. And Jan asks, do all species, sorry, that's Kent. Do all species feed on the same materials? If so, what is it? So not all species will feed on the same material. It really depends on where they live. So whatever's available to them. So each species will have a different type of food that they eat. For this crab, she found scallops. So she decided that she was going to eat scallops. They're able to take their claws and tear open different types of shellfish. So rather than burrowing into it, they can tear it open. Yeah, very good question. And sorry, this one here from Jan, how long can they be out of water? So for this crab, she can be out of water a fair amount. I don't know exactly how long. I haven't tried to take her out of water too long. Probably as long as maybe those tide cycles are. So crab living in the intertidal zone, the high tide, low tide, so maybe 6 hours. She always lives in water, so it would be a huge stressor as well as just scary for her to come out of water for too long. I would say a couple minutes is all I would be comfortable with this crab. But I don't know, for crabs that are used to being out of water, I would just look at the tide cycle with how long they can be out. That's a great question. Okay, and next question. Lisa, the crabs must be feasting at the herring dump in Deep Bay Marina. Yes, really great. That's more of a comment, sorry. Yes, they must be really enjoying themselves. We've had the herring spawning out in Deep Bay, and so that means that there are eggs everywhere, and all of the critters, all of the invertebrates are very happily snacking right now on those eggs. That's a huge boost for our ecosystem. Really great. And James, what do they look like? Oh, are you asking what the herring dump looks like? So it's a bunch of fish that are basically dumping their eggs out into the bay. So you would see them all over the seafloor. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, it is interesting that they can be in and out of water. And I'm not sure if that is a function of them just being able to not breathe while they're out of water, or if it's a function of them being able to breathe out of water for this species. I actually don't know, but I will look that up and let you know. Yeah. Okay. Really great. Any more questions? Oh, and our crab has disappeared. I've been worried because she is so big and so tall that she might jump out of here. Oh, about the crabs. What do they look like? Oh, okay. So James had asked what the crabs look like. So there are so many different ones that look so different. I will post actually a couple pictures in our last session. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this session, our last crab session, which was a couple months ago now, we looked at, I think it was a rock crab. It has the black tips on its claws. So there's that one that's tiny and purple. But then you have these rounder looking crabs or oval shapes. And then you have something like a kelp crab, which has these long arms with the claws on it. So they're really cool. I'll try and post a picture of a kelp crab at some point on our Facebook page. Okay. Any other questions about our graceful crab before we finish up today? I don't see any, but I will pop back after our session just to see if you have any questions at all, and try and answer some of the ones I wasn't able to answer today. I don't know everything about them, but I definitely love them and love learning about them. And I hope that you do too. Okay, fantastic, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we will be live. Oh, thank you. Thank you for joining. We will be back live next Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. PST, so I hope you will join us then for another special mystery creature from our invertebrate touch tanks. If you have any suggestions, definitely post them into the comment section about what you'd like to see in the future. And I will try to accommodate and find the critters you're looking for. Thank you so much. Bye.